this meeting of the Maple Run Unified Board of Directors, School District Board of Directors meeting to order at 6:05 p.m. We are at the central office. Today is December 4th, 2019. We have 7 members present, 1 online, representing 6 votes. The first item is the agenda review, and I would like to, I know I sound like a broken record, but I would like to remove item 7A. Last time Kevin was sick, this time Al is sick, and Al is the one who asked about this. So could I get a motion? Are there any other changes? Could I get a motion? Thank you, Nelda. Second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I said I was going to stop saying all right and okay, but it's not going to happen. Do we have any visitors here who wish to address the board? Seeing none. We have the consent agenda, has the minutes of November 20th and minutes from November 25th. Media packet, grants, and financial statement. Does anybody want to remove any of these for questions? If I don't hear any objections, the consent agenda will be approved. Okay, hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. Item 6A, transcript update. Bill.
Hey all. I want to tell you about the good work that's going on at BFA. The department heads, we had a great meeting today, and we've been, as you know, working on the proficiency-based learning system and the transcripts since I've been up there in September. But we started to really make a schedule of work, and one of the things we wanted to do was really have a collaboratively agreed upon foundation for the reason for proficiency-based learning. And we took the Friday before, the half the day, or the afternoon of the Friday before Thanksgiving, and worked as a group for about 4 hours to really ground our work. And we heard this from the conversations we had with the public about what are the education quality standards saying we need to do? What are our questions about those? Why proficiency-based learning is a good piece. One of the things that that I said to the department heads, and is really part of change process, is that regulation and law is not a good reason to change. It actually doesn't bring ownership. And one of the things that we've learned in this process is that ownership is key for everyone involved. So we're working on the ownership piece of it right now. We've been able to come up with a definition of proficiency-based learning for BFA, and why we assess students, why we have a transcript, and why we have a report card. Those whys have really set a foundation that started our work today as a group, and we'll be continuing next week with another half day of setting out how and what we'll be doing with scoring. That I have to say that I was very excited. Sarah and Heather were in that meeting with me, and Leanne as well. I thought it was one of our best meetings I've seen this fall. We had some really deep conversations, and people really trying to look what's going to be best for kids and what's going to give the most feedback and communication, which is one of our whys for transcripts and report cards, is that it's about communication. And that's the #1 reason for it. It's about how do we communicate to students and to parents and to anyone else as a stakeholder in how a student does. So that's really exciting. Our hope and our intent is that coming out at the end of next week, that we'll have a process set that we can use during in-service in January to start working on refining work with all the staff across BFA, and to really start to look at how do we communicate better how scoring and reporting happens within a class, across classes, across departments, and across the whole school, and that we ground our work in that together. Nothing is off the table right now, because we're trying to figure it out. And I can tell you that in the department head discussion, they're very much, I think they're pretty unified, but they're also asking some really hard questions about what's gonna work best and how do we make what is we were used to letter grades, so it didn't seem like it wasn't complex, but it was because we were used to it. And it was a very complex system, and how do we help it be more simplified and understood by everyone. So, our hope is that we'll do that work with our whole staff, and that they'll be able to communicate starting second semester, if they haven't already as teachers to their classes. I don't have an audit of where that is right now, about how scoring's happening this year, and then looking at what we can do now and what we have to wait for the beginning of next school year. So, I'm hoping to come back in January and update you where we are on that progress.
So is there going to be a consistent method of scoring across the board?
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to say what decisions have to be made across the board, what can be made by department, and what can be made by individual teacher. And consistency is our number one objective. But teachers as long as BFA's been standing and everywhere else, have always had autonomy in their scoring. And so that's where that's not gonna turn overnight.
I mean, how are the students going to know, how are the students and parents going to know for the end of semester how they're going to be scored that semester? Do they have to go to each individual teacher and ask how they're going to do scoring?
They're gonna score the way we have been scoring.
Okay, so it's still going to be that they can continue to improve on their proficiencies throughout the school year, and at the end of the school year, whatever they get at the end of the school year is going to be.
I can't say that right now, Suzanne, because I have to work with the department heads, and I have to give them the space to do that work.
But what I heard you say is, I understand about this semester coming up, but I think what you said is your goal and the department head's goal is to be consistent. And, you know, from the top down, make sure that we all do stuff the same way for stuff that has to be done
The same way.
school-wide, same way.
Yeah.
And at the department level, everybody in the department has the same message and gives the same message in terms of this is how we're scoring.
Yeah, we have to set where those levels are, and we have to do that work together. And we haven't done that work yet. And we have to have the time to sit and be thoughtful about that work, because we don't want to make the same we don't want to get back to the same place we've been.
But that's your goal, right? Is
That's
not
our
to
goal.
leave it whatever anybody wants.
Right, and I think that's everyone's goal up there, that I hear from the staff, oh, give us something consistent, give us some consistency.
So I'm just hoping it gets, by the beginning of next semester, the students have a clear understanding of how they're going to be scored by the end of the year.
So that's what I said was at the end, my goal is that every teacher is giving something, starting the second semester, about how their scoring and reporting works in their classroom.
Okay. All right, I hate to keep asking these questions, but these are the questions that I still have about how, I guess it doesn't matter as much for my daughter since she's a senior, but
So,
in my mind, I'm thinking if she was a junior.
so here's the thing, I understand the urgency. Already in a month, we've compacted about what everywhere else has taken about 6 months to work into 1 month. This is a 3 to 4 year process.
I appreciate that.
And I don't want to get it wrong, because I think that'll do more damage than delaying.
Okay,
So I'm trying to do it, but my first and utmost piece is ownership. If we don't get ownership, we're gonna be right back, we're gonna be in this place where it's gonna be apples and oranges again.
yeah,
And so getting the whole reason for setting the disposition or the why, I'm a Simon Sinek fan, so this is something that he talks about. You have to know your why you're doing something. If we didn't set that why before we started doing the work, we'd still be like, and just today, we had some tough discussions, and they're like, well, let's go back to what we said. And they didn't use those words, but they were doing it. I see the nods from my colleagues, so at least I was interpreting it right while I was there. That they're like, okay, well, that's what we said. Okay, so how do we make that work?
all right, and then my next question is communication to the parents about where we are in the process. how will that happen?
Right now, I can't, I'm too premature because I can't put pressure on the department heads. They feel enough pressure as it is. We've been having discussions about the feeling of urgency, but also making the right turn. And they've been, I gotta tell you, they've been fabulous. The department heads, they're just been great. They get it. They feel the same urgency that's felt at this table, but they also feel let's get this right this time. Let's not go do this a third time.
No, I understand that. Is it safe to assume that there won't be any parent community meetings before sometime next semester?
That's probably what's gonna happen just with the timeline I'm having, because I'm the one that has to do it, and I don't have the time to get there.
I think even just getting that message out to the community could be helpful in terms of transparency and clarity. You know, even if it's on Monday Green and Gold blogs.
I was gonna say, so don't feel bad about asking the question, because I just asked Bill the same question 40 minutes ago, and he said the department heads are asking the same kind of questions in their meetings, so.
And part of it is I
It's a
have to
legitimate
give
question.
them the authority and responsibility, because as soon as I take that away from the department heads, I just lost ownership. And if they don't have ownership, we're definitely not getting to the teachers.
I think some of the, I wonder if some of the fear isn't about like debunking any of the myths that current students, like current juniors probably, are under about how some things were being handled in the most recent past. And if there's anything that could be, and maybe you've already done this, but anything that could be communicated to especially, I guess, juniors and
So
sophomores.
we've gone around and met with all the juniors. We weren't even really many for questions, and they were kind of, we need to have a
Maybe they don't know enough.
They don't know enough. I don't really think there could be individual students.
Yeah.
I don't see it as a group.
Mhm.
What I see is, Sarah, you and I were doing it, so tell me if you got something different. But it was kind of like, we'll be back to you at the beginning of the second semester as we bring you your transcript. So like, okay.
Quite otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Yeah.
kind of an awkward silence of like, okay, so guys, we're here, we have questions, and they were like, no.
Yeah, well, I think the question that I've heard is their confusion, and I understand that this is the work that you're doing around what is allowed to be made up, what is not allowed to be made up, whether it's an AP class or, not an AP class. On these, do you have to only do it on flex days? Are you, just like the process in which you are able to bring up grades, because I think there was a little bit of complacency, right? Where they thought that threes were going to be good enough. And so now they're seeing and realizing that there's work that needs to be done on their part, and not just to be complacent about threes. But then what is that process? And then they feel like, some people feel as though that they're going back to teachers and asking, what is the process? What is it that I need to bring up? I look at these 17 standards that you have, here for me, and I have 3s and 4s. If I have 20% 3s and the rest of them 4s, does that mean I'm gonna get a 4 and they're not getting a straight answer? So it's that nitty-gritty stuff, and I understand that's the work that's being done. But are there any messages that could be made globally, whether it be to students or to parents, about what they should be doing now, or any myths that could be?
Same thing we told them in those meetings, do the best you can and attempt the highest rigor you can.
Did you
And
talk about dual enrollment and how
No,
because I think even that would be helpful if the students knew that what they get at the end of this semester is what they're gonna get as that half credit, if it's a full credit course, because it's technically 2 separate courses, which I never would have known.
and I don't know if that's gonna continue.
I do want to say that in the last 3 days, I've walked through 11 different classrooms. And in all of those classrooms, I looked for the proficiencies, if they were posted, if the rubrics were up, so that students would know what was expected of them. And I would say in probably 9 out of the 11, it was very visible. Okay. I also saw in those classrooms dates of, like, for example, you can make up work from the solar system unit until December 9th, for example. So that's very visible. So students are aware of how much time they have to go back and retest and reassess. And so I think that teachers are making an effort to make that more visible for students so that they're able to really see what those expectations are.
I think that would be important because if things don't change, even if things stay the same, then that's an important message to get to students now because the end of the semester is in, I don't know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And you know, if that, whether it stays the same for this year and changes for next year, I think it's hard when there's a moving target if students don't really understand what it's gonna look like 8 weeks from now. And what is my performance at semester 1, how does that impact semester 2? So.
Any other questions for Bill? Thank you. Item 6B, negotiations report. Professional staff, we did have our first ground rules meeting on Monday, and it went well. We agreed on ground rules, at least, so that's progress. And we were able to relatively easily schedule some future dates, about 2 a month, so out until March. And then,
You want me to give those or not?
sure.
So we have our first meeting, we met on the 2nd, we'll be meeting again on the 16th of December, and then on January 13th and 29th, on February 12th, and March 11th and 23rd is what we have scheduled. Unless I got all that right, Mike.
Can you say those again, please?
December 16th, January 13th and 29th, February 12th, March 11th and 23rd.
And Nilda, I know I owe you an email.
So that's for professional staff and then support staff.
The email anymore.
Support staff is planning on starting meeting in January.
In January, yeah.
And that's Alicia, Al, and Jack, I believe. And that's all we have for now. Okay, item 6C, goal discussion. So I'd like to start talking tonight about some possible board goals. I don't think, you know, tonight we're not going to talk about how we achieve the goals or how we measure them, measure success, but I'd like to get some ideas out for what we'll set as goals.
I'd love to see promoting student achievement. And that, I mean, you certainly include teacher achievement and something about the curriculum
You mean like recognizing
and,
student achievement or improving?
well, don't get me going on.
So one thing I would like to say is I'd like this to be, you
Yeah,
know,
you're
goals
looking for just
around the board,
right.
things that we can do to make us function better. I know Joanna and Alicia agreed on one about communication, so I don't know if you two want,
That's important.
somebody wants to talk about that.
Well, I just think that clearly from what has transpired over the last few months, transparency, increased communication with the community, providing opportunities for more engagement with the community might be a good thing so that there's more of an open dialogue and they understand who the board members are and where we are and how to approach us. We're not so scary or maybe we are, I don't know.
And also what the board role is, you know.
Yeah, that's true too, yeah.
So I think it's so important, and I think it comes up because it's hard. We end up just saying, oh, well, we represent the community, and, you know, we talk to them in the supermarket, and hopefully we know what's right. But it would be so useful to actually, you know, get feedback regularly from the community on things, and to be able to inform them. So many times it's, you know, we put things in the messenger, we put things on wherever, and then, you know, you talk to the person, they go, well, I didn't know anything about that bond vote, and you're like, but we should be able to figure something out.
Yeah, and meeting people where they're at, going to communities and making sure that it's something for everybody, not just people, like, I just want to make sure it's not just folks who have to reach out, but that we are going to places and making ourselves accessible.
Right.
I feel like that's really important.
And I said this before, but I was at one time on a curriculum committee for English, and so it was a regular role for community members to play in which they were very well informed about what was happening. So I stand by that as a good option, or one of the options to add to that.
One of the things that made me think about this was Bill and Sarah were at the open house at BFA. And, you know, they just sat there waiting for people. They had their easels and sticky notes to stick up there as people stopped in to see them. And, you know, they probably got 6 people, but that was 6 people that we wouldn't have heard it from otherwise. And there's no reason why a couple board members couldn't be sitting right there too. And then we can fight each other for who gets to talk to.
And I think that's a really good point, is that
Share
it
the
doesn't need
cheese
to be
platter.
a separate event. There are events going on, the great events going on at all the buildings that we could just, a couple of people sign up to attend, just like the graduations, you know what I mean? Like the
Yes.
concerts or whatever, art shows or wherever that there might be already.
Informational nights, what,
Right,
tons of things.
right, and the schools can best tell us what are the, you know, where are we seeing traffic through, you know?
And I would just to piggyback on that, to give you an example, the number of people who came up to me and told me that over a 3-day period, the number of board members were at the musical, high school musical,
We were all, I think they're just.
and how much they appreciated it.
We bought the tickets in bulk.
It's that sort of thing, because that's the point where you can get to talk to people,
Right,
and it gets back.
and it's noticed, I didn't realize it, but it's noticed. It's important.
So what do people think about that? Is that worthwhile to have a goal around improving communication with the community?
I think it needs to be one of the top goals.
And I think it's both ways. It's out and in.
Can I ask a question about that? I went to Matilda. It was awesome. I say, I don't, because I wanted to mention it tonight, and what I was wondering, I was thinking after, because I went to the last performance, and I was thinking, given all that we've been through with the grades and such, and public's view of the board, well, I think it's turned around. I think people see that you are all working hard to make it right. But I thought this would be a perfect chance to highlight something very, very positive. And I didn't know whether as a board member, I could pen a letter and send it without first maybe running it past you and Kevin, because I don't know as a board member whether, my doing that, whether, because I want to sign it for the member, but then am I allowed to do that? Or do I speak as one on things like this, as simple as that perhaps? But I would have thought it would have been nice for, because apparently more of the few of us had gone, and even a board member writing a letter to the editor for people to see could be a positive. So, the question is, can I do that? Or does that have to run past you or Kevin?
I don't think so, as long as you're not trying to represent the board.
The full board.
So,
Right, like,
if you're just representing yourself, I think that's fine. I don't think we have a policy against it,
So at the
so.
moment I put board member, would people assume, oh, I'm,
I don't think so.
I think around that goal, what I'd like to see are some clarifications around the role and what is appropriate and what is the role of the board and what the communications would be or could look like. Just giving people some examples of things like that would be helpful, especially for new. I think for me who's new, I want to make sure we do it the right way.
Yeah.
I think as part of that is responding to community requests and how we handle
The
that.
right way, absolutely. And I think
Everybody
actually
can request feedback.
in doing that as a community, not a training, but go through the steps with each community and saying, if you have a complaint, this is what it looks like, you know, kind of thing.
I would support everything you just said, because I think it's important. I feel like we were very heavily told what we are not allowed to do during that training, but I don't think that we really went over what
What the
we
best
can
way
do
is, or, yeah.
and how we can be, supportive, effective.
And just to piggyback, it also helps community members to know that, hey, when you just show up at a meeting and spring something on us, you're probably not gonna get a good response. But if you were to tell somebody ahead of time and then come talk about an agenda item, it's a totally different story.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I think that's a really good goal.
Okay, does anybody have another one? Go ahead.
well,
That's email.
I know.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, if someone else has one, go ahead.
Well, I wasn't sure if it was a goal per se, it was just something that caught my interest after the technology study. And I know it's the second one done in a number of years, and it was mentioned how we need to perhaps move on it. And the one that stood out most to me was the fact when our students get to BFA that they don't have their own computer. And coming from environments where they often do. And the study seemed to point to that as that's becoming more the norm. And I was just curious as to whether or not the discussion can continue and whether or not that's a novel goal. Should we be working towards it? Is it an expense issue, or is it just, and again, I didn't know it was the purview of the goal of the board, but just, it's something that I keenly would like to see discussion on, at least, to weigh the merits, and if it's viewed as workable, how soon it could happen, how it would happen, or whether it's not a good idea. I tend to think it is.
So my first instinctive answer to Steve was, no, I don't think that's a good goal. I think it's totally something that we want to monitor, and we want to talk about at meetings and deal with.
Right.
But then I started to think, well, what is it that we're supposed to do? We're supposed to manage budgets.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna go one-to-one at BFA, we're gonna need money in the budget, and we need to support that. We're also gonna need policies in the district around what are our expectations for students in technology and digital learning, et cetera.
And also, another recommendation prior to that one was perhaps having committees to discuss such things, so that not getting the cart before the horse, just so, you know, we need computers to send them out. It needs to be, it sounded like they were suggesting this needs to be a concerted, thought-out process. That just putting them in their hands isn't necessarily a good thing, that this should be part of a constructive, overarching,
Well, and that's why I
plan.
think we have to be careful about stepping on these guys' toes,
No.
because that's what they'll be doing, is planning how they would implement it and stuff.
Yes, and I realize that's always
And
making
what-
that suggestion that I'm perhaps even putting cart before the horse in a position I shouldn't even be in.
But I think that the goal, you know, in terms of what you're talking about, there's so many layers, because it's not just computers, it's internet access, and it's access in the community, so students that don't have access at home have a place to go to access it. You know, the school library, and looking, you know, so it's multi-layered, but I think that the role of the school board is really to be able to have a really clear understanding of what's going on and be able to speak to that in the community and get feedback, and also more from the.
Yeah, find out what.
And to know what policy, what budget, what is needed to make sure we're supporting what the leadership goals are. So their administrative leadership goals, great for the district, but what do you need from the board? How do we make sure that communication is really clear too, so that we're able to be knowledgeable and supportive of what we need to make sure we're moving those goals forward as well.
So that would, like, Steve's idea is a great idea. I don't think anybody would really, well, maybe there would be people that would make it. But back to what Sue was saying, it's really about an equity issue, right? Because, and so that was like one of my ideas. I put the cart before the horse, you know, talking about making, you know, pre-K busing for preschool, because there's so many kids who can't get to preschool because it's really hard. And is that our job to do that as a board? No. But creating access, right, creating equity and access to all of our students to ensure a great, full, equitable education is something that we can support and figure out how to do that through policies and budgets and whatnot. And prioritizing what would be those objectives, you know, to meet, to ensure that we were making that happen. And one of them could be, you know, one-on-one access for all of our high school students, especially if it's a paperless school. If it's a paperless school and not everybody has a computer, that doesn't really seem to add up, does it? Is that an unrealistic expectation? So
I think
I support that.
Excuse me.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I'm done.
Well, I thought it all tied into seeing that the appropriate resources are available. And then that ties into the budget.
So can I ask Kevin and Bill to chime in on this particular one?
I would say Joanna's right and Steve's right, but I would see them as two separate two separate
Right, we have
goals.
it recorded. I'll be able to say that back to myself.
December 3rd, 6:35. To me, they're two, you're the umbrella. You're looking at the big picture, the what. And Joanna's saying that there's an issue, and always will be an issue in school districts, around ensuring equity and making sure that they have access to computers is an infinitesimal little bit of that. But the what is ensuring the equity and following the definitions that we've adopted from the state. Steve is talking about a technology issue, and that technology is important, and the study's been done. And your umbrella there is around technology and all that comes with that, to ensure that, I don't have the wording yet, but they're both good, very good goals for the board, that then it comes to us to have to talk to you about how we're gonna do that. And,
Do we need to narrow down the equity one at all, or?
I don't think so. I mean, you might just say, you've already adopted the definition, so there could be some wording around the definition of equity, and that's stuff we're doing all the time. It's in our 5-year plan, actually.
Right.
And you're overseeing that. And in everything you do, what the definition says, equity is part of the discussion.
But computers are just one of the resources needed to support a curriculum. There could be the need for classes. I mean, resources is a huge umbrella also.
Yep.
Nelda, did you have a thought?
Yeah, I have something. So I'm gonna be really unpopular with this. I've been trying in my head to figure out how to turn this into a goal. So I wasn't even gonna say it, but I'm gonna say it because maybe you guys can figure out how to make it a goal. I would like to get information on the challenges and barriers that administration and teachers are having at each of the schools. Not because I'm going to solve them for them. I want to be aware, and I want to be able to understand when maybe I hear something on the street in my own head, not to try to solve it, because I feel like I'm very data poor when it comes to that sort of stuff. And another thing that I was going to ask about is, we don't know things like how many kids from St. Albans Town School are participating in Fairfield programs, or how many kids are whatever, any of those combinations. Just numbers. It's not that I'm going to do anything with them or take action on them. It's just like an information kind of piece. So, and the other thing sort of tangential to this is, personally, I can't believe, and I probably am going to jinx this, but I can't believe that we haven't had an expulsion hearing in, 3 years? I mean, we were having them like once a month at the high school, so what has changed? Certainly not the amount of drugs that are being used in the community, because we know that has only changed in one direction. So what has impacted that?
Baby.
So it's just a bunch of questions kind of garbled in one big mess, but how do we either get informed on that or get handouts on that or, put all the things on the agenda for reports? Because I know that the administrators that are present there know the answers to all this, probably without even looking them up. How many out of school placements are there? We get those budgets and we hear about, the special ed this, and oh yeah, well, we have an out of placement. Well, did we not even know that the whole year? I mean, I think those are facts that I believe we should know. And I know that you're all rolling your eyes right now and you're saying Nilda's getting in the weeds. I just want to be really clear that I am not trying to solve this for the administrators. I just want the information. I think every school board member should have this information, and
So,
we should all want it.
I
So
agree.
turn that into,
yeah, so
how do you
no,
turn that into a goal?
so you know, that I would totally agree with what you said, especially when you first spoke up. That for me, I do have people stop me on the street with information, not an awful lot of details. And it's, what do we do with that information? It would be nice for me to know what are the challenges that each of the different schools are having in terms of staffing or staffing issues, equity. What are the challenges that each of the schools are dealing with? Because again, so what are the challenges, and then what do we do with that information when someone comes up to me on the street or in the pack to say, Susan, you need to talk with so-and-so? Well, I'm not gonna go try digging up information, but sometimes when people approach me, I'm so clueless, and maybe I don't need to know the information, but it would be helpful to have a better understanding of what some of the challenges are at each of the different facilities.
You know, we love to hear all the good things that are going on, but not everything that goes on is good. Some things are, I love the word challenging, and so we really need to know that also. I totally agree.
Yeah, and I totally understand the confidentiality piece. I mean, obviously that's a.
I'm not sure this answers Nilda's question, but I'll remind you that last month we talked about the fact that we are, given what we'd heard at the retreat, we're changing our reports that we're doing at the end. And while right now our reports are going to be around budgetary issues for the next couple months, yeah, the goal is.
Right, but that's a big wow though. That isn't, you know, like, a goal that the board can develop because of whatever you see. That's like, you had to do what you're doing, no offense, but you did, related to the transcripts. And it's great that Bill is pulling the teams together and making all that happen, but you know what? There wasn't a choice there, really. It had to happen.
Okay, yeah.
We did a lot as a board. I mean, we made some hard decisions as a board based on, at least in part, with some of that stuff. So I think when things get that important, they become a separate agenda item on the agenda. And the other stuff is just these like publishable type facts that I'm talking about that I no longer know. I used to be able to talk in generalities that there were, you know, 800 students at BFA and 200, you know, whatever, first graders. And not that I need to know that, I want to know that. Am I the only one that, is anybody like shaking their head yes or nodding with me?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I'm just feeling like.
Informed, in order to be able to provide, you know, the best support and to, you know, say yes to things and pass budgets and, you know, and of course, we should be more informed.
And we get that. Nilda, I hadn't finished when you started talking again, in that what we had decided to do, which probably won't solve the whole problem, but was to come during the time that typically would be done with reports, to prepare a list of things relative to challenges that we would present to the board on a regular basis. The only issue that we have to work out is what you're talking about. You kind of have to know the question before you can do the answer. So what are the things that the board wants to hear about? And we were going to do presentations on the challenges. So that would start that conversation. And we're already actually starting as a leadership team to come up with a calendar that would talk about, you know, what are the issues that the board should hear about that are challenges in our schools.
But maybe we could even get some of that trend data, like at the beginning of each school year.
Yeah, and
Like a spec sheet on each school, what's the population, what's the free and reduced population? How many teachers are there, what's the percentage of special ed students, what are the 504 students, whatever, like all the.
And I had started to
Type
get
one,
some
you
of
know,
that.
Just a spec sheet on each school that just gives you some good information to know and be able to begin some,
And it's helpful to make comparisons with, when you hear about other districts and you
For
say,
sure.
are we the same size, that kind of thing. And so I had started to collect some of that. I haven't gotten very far because I didn't want to bother Martha or Kathy at that time. But collecting, like see how student population varies over year to year. All that stuff is very valuable, so we can proceed with that. There'll be time for me to bother Martha. Because I think budgetary information is useful too, to see how budget has
Yeah,
changed.
each
from year to
school's
year.
administrative assistant could do that for us, it wouldn't have to be Martha's job to do that. She's got enough to do.
So I can't tell if I'm interrupting because I can't see you guys, it's really hard to do this on the phone, but whatever. Could the goal be something like revise the agenda to include, certain things, and then we can at least measure that?
Well, I think that Kevin's already saying that we're already doing that, so we should try to see how
Right,
this.
I understand, but can't we incorporate that into one, we can stay on top of it if we put it as one of our 4 goals. And the other thing I was gonna say, I think it was Susan that was talking about running into people on the street. Once again, that's not, our goal is not to solve the problem. When they come and point something out to you and you kind of look at it and you don't know what to say. I mean, what you say is you send them to their principal, the administration, fly everything off the flagpole, and then you can also inform the superintendent or principal or whatever it is, hey, I had a conversation with so they have this concern, you give them a heads up. Because I don't want to suggest we're trying to solve all this stuff, or that the board is trying to solve this stuff. It's just, I don't know, I feel very uninformed, and maybe it's because we were so informed when we were individual school boards, and I don't want, I'm happy that we're Maple Run. I think that there are a lot of good things that have happened from this, but we need to just get back a little something in data.
Yep.
And I support your thing, Kevin, very much,
We used to work
what
together.
you all said.
And I would just say what I'm hearing, I heard it from Sue and I'm hearing it from you, part of the issue is you want certain data. And when we know what that data is, we can certainly supply that. Some of the stuff we already have, and we just haven't thought of putting it out. But the second part, what I'm hearing is, once again, around roles and responsibilities is just, what do we do with when I've heard that several times from Steve and from, a bit of training on what do we do, and we have the public come up to us about a problem. And
Yeah, it varies.
And I think, so it's that, and it's also, I'm gonna say, being informed of what some of the real challenges are at each of the different schools.
We do
So
that.
I'm not standing there looking like, that was just the first time I've ever heard of this.
Yep.
And we used to work 2 days on the BFA budget. We would sit and hear all the board chairs, the department chairs, so that we understood the budget. Now the budget is huge, and Martha is the best budget person I've ever known. And she does a wonderful job, but it's just hard to digest because we really, I don't know if there could be an update on creating the budget again. That's
On the
maybe
agenda
not a
tonight.
sensible thing.
I was in those BFA budget meetings and they didn't help me at all.
Oh, I thought they were great. And I would think that Nilda and Al would feel the same way, because we really understood.
But it's also very limited who is able to attend full-day meetings.
Right, you're
with
right.
department
That is
heads, so-
true. I mean, what it was really a public relations thing. I mean, we got a lot of goodwill, and social capital with the teachers because we took the time to do that with them. That was what that was about. And I'm not looking for that personally, but I think we just have, have to recognize that it's not all rainbows and unicorns, and that there are some things that are challenging. And, you hear about them on the street. I don't know if Jo Clavel is there, but I bet you she can tell you if she's got me out of state or out of school placement students. Because you guys all know these numbers. These are like, one-offs that everybody knows, and then I don't know. I have no idea. I'm guessing that there probably are.
I mean, to me, you're.
I'm going to stop talking because I'm repeating myself, so.
I think the goal that you're talking about could be incorporated into communication. It's just, different levels. So I think that we could really take that goal, communication, and even split it into 3 areas. Communication from board out to community, communication from school administration to board, and then communication from school and board back out to the community, to parents, students, and community members. So,
If I could, Joanne, you mentioned just having a thumbnail sketch of each school population, what percentage are on free or reduced lunch, so on quarters in the supermarket says, aren't student populations going down, why is the budget still going up? I don't even know, I should, but our population in the school is going up, is it not? Or
Yes.
So to be able to respond even with a quick number of that is, well, did you know, by the way, that our populations are going up in all 4 schools?
Which is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. You're exactly right, and I actually brought the data today because I just got it today on 2019-20 enrollment data, and that's the stuff that you're talking about, and we have it. It's not like people have to go out and find it. It's one thing that would help me is if there are certain things, because once again, it's almost overwhelming about the amount of information that's out there. What are we looking for? If there's certain things like what Nilda's mentioned or what Steve's mentioned, just ask me and say, hey, can we get some information on this? And we can make it happen. That would be easier for us than us kind of guessing what you'd be looking for because there's so much.
If you're moving on goal development, that would be what we do, we spend that time for that one, just saying what we're asking for. So people can think about it.
Yeah, you have some ideas on that. Okay, so I think I'd like to just close this up for now. We've been about 30 minutes. I've got 3 of them, I think.
I
Pardon?
think it's a good start.
Okay. Improve communications, something around technology. We're gonna do some wordsmithing here, and something around equity. Those are the 3 that it seems like we're in agreement on.
Student achievement.
Oh, yes, I just started with that.
I don't know, so like what exactly, Sally?
I mean, that's what we're here for,
But
for students to achieve.
But recognize what part, doing what with achievement?
Well, certainly, making sure it ties in again, making sure you have the resources, making sure you have a quality curriculum, making sure the teachers are achieving in their areas. It all ties in together.
So a better understanding of how student achievement is changing over time?
That's certainly a part of it, yeah.
Because it seems to me like it's these
Could be
guys
under
who are,
But is that information that we want included? Like, I'm trying to figure out.
I see it as a goal, a very important goal.
But is that something that's in the board's purview to monitor that? That doesn't, I'm just trying to
Yeah,
get.
well, I definitely think we need to be able to, we need the information to be able to monitor that, absolutely. And, part of that is making sure that the students have the building blocks to be able to achieve. And of course, in my outlook, that includes cursive writing. That may actually become a wonderful skill, almost like a foreign language. And might belong on a curriculum at the rate we're going. So I see that as something that we don't currently really review that, but I think that's something that we certainly should be aware of.
I think Nina just came on.
Nina, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hi,
Friendly.
just in time. Okay. All right, so we'll have to do some, as I said, some further wordsmithing from it, and then we'll have to dig into details about how we're gonna, what work we're going to do to make progress on these things, and how we're gonna measure success. Thank you, everybody. Item 7B, Joan, bid for camera system. And we're looking at this because we have to approve contract for a greater than $15,000. And I was just wondering, Joan, what is it for?
So, right now we've got together, probably over the last 10 years, we have pieced together old systems and old cameras. And in the last few incidents where we really needed them, they have not been able to provide us with the information we need. So the system we're looking at is more on par with the other schools. It's very similar to what BFA has done. This is being used right now in town, very, very similar equipment. So we just need to upgrade our equipment so that we're a lot more effective and reliable when we need this information. There have been times, it's really funny because when you're looking at a bad camera, you have no idea how bad your system is. But we had one good camera and we had one incident. And when you can see how much you can tell with a good camera, it's like we need this everywhere. We need to be able to have this kind of information. So it's something we've talked about for a while. It was part of our BizBit audit that we had done with the insurance company. This was one of their recommendations. We're able to get the other part of the grant for Maple Run because this actually was part of our audit from BizBit to be able to offset about $5,000 for this. But
Oh, is that the, like, state security grant?
yes.
Well,
Windows-
no,
it's
it's,
BizBit is our insurance company,
Yeah.
and
and they do safety grants each year.
Okay, from this bit. Okay.
And they also do safety audits. So we had a safety audit done by them of our school. And this was one of the things that they recommended us putting it in. And I will tell you, until I actually saw the difference myself, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, we need this now. So it's really helpful. And it's a pretty small investment for the kind of power it gives us around safety.
Thank you, Joan. I'd look for a motion to award the bid to Connor Communications in the amount of $33,729.29 for the St. Albans City School camera system.
Can, yeah, what do you ask?
I
After
was
the
just trying to
motion.
get a motion then.
So moved. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Steve. Okay, any discussion?
I take it Connor's the one that's been preferred.
So all three vendors have worked in our school. All of them know our school, almost all of the schools in our district. So we went with the lowest provider. The only negative with going with the lower provider is that there's only room to grow to 64 cameras, and we are putting in 50 up front. So this system can only grow to 64, but we've made the coverage, we think, really comprehensive. And to go up to the next level to get the 70-something, it was almost 15 to 20% more, and we didn't think that that was justifiable because we don't know that we'll ever need to grow that big.
Yeah.
And also with technology, in 5 to 10 years, we're probably going to be replacing it anyway, so I just didn't see the justification. The third vendor, that was like twice the amount.
Yeah.
That's because it was a fiber optic backbone. We don't need that. So that was just like over technology, and that definitely was not going to be helpful. So we feel really good with the lowest bid, and so we're comfortable with that one. It's somebody who knows our school, who has come through for us all the time. And if you look at the components, because we did a sheet for you so you could compare everything, see what was the same across the board. If you also look at it, the long-term maintenance of it, with the lowest bid also stays lowest. So we thought that was a good way to go across the board.
Was this already in your budget for this year, not just kind of coming in
No,
new, or
no.
this is an
And
add-on?
I can talk to this.
Thank you.
No, it is not in the current budget, but City School had received a fund from a family called Tuat quite a few years back that gave the school district, I want to say it was like,
26.
but that's what's left, but I think it was like maybe, well,
That's what we had.
anyway, there's $26,000 in this fund. And at one point, the city school board said, Those funds, we're gonna designate them for technology. So we have $26,000 in that fund waiting to be used, and so we're gonna access those funds for that, plus the $5,000 from the Visbit grant. So it leaves about a little over $2,000 that's gonna come from the local budget, which we can support.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
No, all the questions were answered.
okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Nina?
Did she go off?
Yeah, I think that's what it was before. Nina, are you there? Okay, we'll say the ayes have it, 6-0. 6-0, I'm not counting her. Thank you. Okay, item 7C, budget process, Martha.
So I'm just gonna give you an overview of what the budget process is tonight. Next board meeting will be when I actually give you the first draft of the budget. And for individuals that have been on the board for a few years, you will be familiar with the process. I typically start with a cover sheet that kind of gives you some of that data that you were looking for, you know, what per pupil spending, what last year's budget was compared to what we're proposing for the first year, for this the new budget we're presenting. It also has some breakout information, like here's the cost of all the salaries in these budgets, here's the cost of all the benefits in these budgets. So it gives that kind of detailed information. The first draft, which will be, like I said, next board meeting, will mostly be just the expenditure side of the process. I won't have a lot of the revenue information available yet, plus I have to wait for some information from the state to be able to calculate some of those revenue sources. And so that information will come mostly the first meeting in January. The budget does have to be adopted by January 22nd. So that gives us 3 board meetings to review the budget and go over it and have it adopted. And like we've done in the past or suggested in the past, if more additional board meetings are needed to review the budget, we can always call a special meeting. But right now it's planned to be reviewed during the next 3 scheduled board meetings. You will also need to at some point before probably by this first meeting in January, set a tuition rate for the following year so that we can announce those tuition rates. And you'll have, I know it's not detailed, but it is a summary budget of the expenses. The detailed budget I didn't print it, I printed to my screen this afternoon because I'm just barely getting all of the information together. It was 150 pages long, which I don't think and I don't want this board going through every line of 150 lines of a budget. So you will get the summarized budget by function code, which function codes is just like cost centers. And then you will also get a summary of what the revenues are as well. And then eventually you will get the sheet that gives all the tax rate calculations and how it impacts the tax rate in the end. So that's our process. Like I said, today I just put in, I think, the final preliminary numbers. I haven't even run a summary to see what the total looked like. I didn't dare do it before tonight's meeting. But
Plausible deniability.
Yes. So I can't even tell you what that total looks like right now. And between now and that next board meeting, we'll be bringing it to a leadership team so that they can look at it, make sure we haven't missed anything. We're sending the information back to the schools because they're the ones that submit the information to me. Make sure I haven't missed anything in putting the numbers into the system.
So I'd say 2 things. Your summary on the front page normally includes, here are the big changes, right?
Yeah.
Like we added
Yep.
staff or
Yes.
something.
Yes, we usually
change
try
in
to
programs,
give you
whatever.
that kind of information, yes.
And then that January 22nd day is just set by statute, because that's based on backing off from town meeting.
From town meeting day.
warnings and
That's
stuff like that. So.
And we happen to have a school board meeting that night, so that night you have to approve it that night. You have to approve a budget at that night. So that's the process. Anybody have any questions?
I just wondered if you'd heard anything about whether the state was going to get its I know they have to provide you with some information. Is that possibly coming in a timely manner?
Hopefully better than last year. I have gotten some preliminary information that was due out December 1st. I got it just this week, yesterday, which is a day or two late, which is not unusual.
That's around the yield, is that?
Yes, it's around the yield. The biggest piece that we really need to have to be able to do our calculations is the equalized pupil count. And those don't come out until December 15th. Those are the preliminary numbers, and then they finalize them hopefully by the 1st of January. Last year, they never finalized them until, I don't know, it was like March, April.
Yeah.
It was crazy. We were having to try and do all that calculation on our own to try to
But you still,
give
your deadline is
projections.
still fixed.
My deadline is still fixed. but
So if you remember, our per pupil spending on
Yeah.
the ballots was wrong.
Yeah,
Because it was, you're,
because we had to approve the warning by January 22nd, but yet we didn't have our final numbers, so we had to put a number on there, and it was not the number that ended up being the final, but
And I would say that this year too, we have a 12% health insurance
12.7% health insurance rate increase.
on
so-
the insurance plans that we don't even know what they're gonna be until
Right,
December 15th,
Till
when the
December.
arbitrator makes his decision.
and makes a
So-
determination on the negotiated benefit
You were
package.
amazingly accurate.
Well, I try. I am a stickler for details, but.
we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yes, we know.
Any other questions for Martha?
This wouldn't really be for, I don't think it's really for Martha, it's probably for the team that's gonna give Martha the numbers. But, you know, we had talked, before about, possibly contemplating or thinking about having a technology director next year, and the work that was on your docket to do before you made those decisions in terms of doing a skills assessment for the various people that are currently employed, and would it be one of those people, would we need to hire somebody else? But, you know, it just, when I look at budgets, oftentimes we look at what we had last year, and then we just kind of raise it up a little bit, right? To make sure that we can, you know, pay for the things for the next time around. And will you have time to be able to get to that work, or prior
That's what we're
to
working on.
submitting, you know, numbers around?
I'm hoping, I'm crossing my fingers, I'm not giving you 100%, but I'm hoping by the December 19th, 18th,
Our next meeting,
that we'll be able to
talk about that.
talk about that. We actually start the discussion tomorrow in our leadership team meeting. And we've done, I told you earlier, we've done an audit. So part of the discussion is gonna be the leadership talking about, well, what could this look like under a different structure? And so yes, I'm hoping we can.
Okay.
That's my goal.
Thank you.
Okay? All right? Okay?
All right.
That could be a
Okay.
goal.
All right.
It should be. Item 8A, warrants. Alicia.
What'd you guys do last meeting? I'm sorry. We didn't sign them. There's a lot this time to go all the way over there, ask them.
Thank you. Item 8B, superintendent's report. Oh, wait a minute, I need a motion to approve the warrants, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Sally.
Second.
Susan.
Thank you, Sue. All those in favor of approving the warrants?
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it, 6-0. Item 8B, superintendent's report.
Okay, first off, I'll be passing around the latest board administrator. It's actually one of the better board administrators. It's got some very good information, so I think it'll be good reading for you. It's under roles and responsibilities of superintendent and board and whatever, and it's well written. The major thing I wanted to talk about tonight was to piggyback on Martha a little bit on the budget.
That's gotta hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. We, and Martha kind of alluded to some of this, because we are always Vermont is so unique when it comes to budget, and we don't have good information sometimes with the state. But if you read the Digger, Vermont Digger this morning, it talked about the fact that they're looking at the possibility, given what they know now about budget statewide, they're looking at the possibility of a 6 cent increase on their end, even before we get started. And a reminder that we're a statewide funding mechanism, thank you. And because of that, anything that happens in any school district, we're actually paying for. So the frustration sometimes is when you've got budgets that are constantly going up 8, 9, 10, 15%. We're paying for those. In addition, we pay for all new construction, bond issues. And if you've been reading about that, we've got South Burlington looking for around 270 million
Right, yeah.
bond issue for next year. We've got Winooski
Over $57
looking
million.
at 57 million. We're paying on Burlington's 80 million. And they keep going. And we're gonna, this isn't something we're gonna not see, sorry for the double negative, along the way, because our buildings are getting such that throughout the state, without a construction aid, our buildings are at an age, they're falling apart in some cases. So even though I really question the 270 million Taj Mahal down in South Burlington, I typically understand, and I feel a little weird about going in with a $6 million budget bond last year. But we did what we felt we needed to do to bring things up to par, not to build a brand new building. But what I'm trying to get at is all of those construction items and everything else goes into a big pot in the state, and then that's where our increases come from. So sometimes we don't understand that it's not our community that's paying for our budget. It's all the communities paying for everybody's budgets throughout there. So a 6 cent increase is what it is. We don't have any more information on, but that's 6 cents even before you start. And that is worrisome to me. But we'll see how it goes.
The article didn't say what kind of like budget increases they were expecting. You know, what numbers they used for that. I was hoping it said.
It did not say, but they have that data, and that's how they get the 6 cents.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. But I guess it's more of a preparation when we finally see Martha's budget. In that.
MRUSD budget, not my,
That's a good point.
it was my budget.
Is 6% equaling 6 cents? Because I'm looking at it right here. So
Yeah, it says 6% at the beginning.
Taxes will rise over 6%.
It says 6% at the beginning, Joanne, and then you go further down the article, and they mentioned that means 5 or 6 cents.
Okay.
So yes,
I thought that's what they meant was 6 cents, yeah.
yeah.
The
The other,
5 or 6 was non-residential versus residential.
correct. The other thing, and given our conversation today, I think I'm going to do more than I was just going to present. I think I'll actually, for next time, give you the data. But I just barely, today, this afternoon, got some data on enrollment for our district. And I will tell you right off the board, this data that we get is what we call first day enrollment. And that, for what it is a snapshot of enrollments, because in day 2 there's going to be different, because you're always having people going in and going out. And it's not equalized pupils, it's enrollment, it's bodies in our schools. But for the second year in a row, we've got
Is it bodies in your school or is it just bodies in the district?
We have it broken down to schools and in district, if that's what you mean.
This district.
In this school district.
Right, I know, but not all of those students go to BFA, SATEC.
The kids who live in this district, residents.
No, these are the students that are enrolled in our school buildings.
So it wouldn't be out of,
So not students who are off campus, in other places. Because we have students that belong to us that are at other schools, is
There's-
the question.
No, enrolled in the building.
Enrolled
These
in
are
the
enrolled in the building.
so only the ones here.
Okay.
Their bodies in the building.
Okay,
And I'll get you, I don't want to go into specifics now because I'll get the information, but just for you to know that we did go up. A quick cursory look of this is we've gone up about 20 students this year and
in the district.
in the district. Interesting, and the principals don't know this yet, we're going to talk about it tomorrow, but
I hope we haven't seen it.
interesting is Fairfield, that went up like 16 students this year.
That doesn't surprise me. It's a great place to be.
Absolutely.
We finally allowed more building permits in our town. Imagine that.
Yeah.
You don't let more than 9 building permits happen in a year, then your population will start to decrease.
Okay. It's just a nice feeling because if you do any type of reading about the state, we're looking at a slightly under a 1% increase this year. We looked at a slightly under 2% increase last year. And while that's happening, there's a good portion of the state that are seeing 5% decreases in enrollment. So we're going in the right direction. I think Franklin County's going in that direction. I think we're seeing that in a good portion of the schools around here. So, you know, people are seeing us as a suburb of Burlington to a degree, and it's a good thing. So it's going to be helpful. I just want to mention one more time, it's not equalized pupils, so we'll get that information from the state, and that will look different. Hopefully up, since our enrollments have been up here, but it's a different procedure altogether.
Different process.
Thanks. Go ahead.
That's good. Okay, item 8C, board announcements. Does any,
I have one question for Kevin. Did you, you had talked about putting up the principal position in December. Is that something that happened?
It's ready to go up probably tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
I've got Bill looking at it one last time before we put it out.
That's great. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I was doing some reading about Wake County, North Carolina, and that's the Golden Triangle, the Research Triangle. Very technical area, and they have a daughter who teaches down there too. And they are actually supporting mental math, which we like to call it, but it's learning how to do, doing math in your head. And they are actually having the kids learn the times tables. But they don't do this so that it's a whole class. They may have the kids do it once a month or something. But you learn, or at least those who want to learn. And that's what they're doing with cursive writing too. It's not taught very often. And I really support that. I think that's great.
cool. So,
Well, so I just wanted to, it kind of dovetails with what you were saying earlier. I had an experience yesterday morning. Yesterday morning.
I meant that.
I drink
One of those days.
One day this week. I bring a whole busload of kids into town every day practically. And this young man got into my car and was telling me about, he's on a sports team, and was telling me that the first game was tonight. And I said, well, who are you guys playing? He said, well, I don't really know. I said, you're the manager, how could you not know? He said, well, I couldn't really read it. I said, what do you mean you couldn't read it? He said, it was in cursive. It made me really sad. I said, and I told him I was gonna speak about this, but not give any identifying information. And I said, I said, so what did you learn? He goes, well, we learned how to write our name. And he said, I can read some cursive, but, I can pick out some letters, but I can't read cursive. And I thought, man, that's just so sad. I'm thinking he's a brilliant kid, but he's a sophomore in high school, and I'm thinking, ooh. It was a totally different feeling that I've ever had before in terms of how we're preparing our students. Like, it was the first time I had ever really, it was an in-your-face moment for me.
Well, it's embarrassing not to know how to do something like that. And, young people are very embarrassed very easily when given a strange task or something they haven't done or appearing somewhere and they say, wow, are you gonna split the bill? I have no idea how to split that in my head. Forget about a calculator. Well, there are things you need to know how to do. And, I'm a big person on spelling. Kids need to learn to spell. Or they at least they need to know how to speak when you're using social media versus how to speak when you're writing or speaking in a formal situation. So, there.
Anyone
What
else?
can I say?
I have to share this one.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I was blown away. I was just, it was stunning, and I want to say hats off to everyone who was a part of it. Sue Palmer, Armand Messier. It sounded like a good number of parents, the community came together, businesses, but the play was for those who were there, could attest, I assume. And also, for what it's worth, Matilda, Danny DeVito did a movie version of this in 1996, I think, and the library does have a DVD if you want to check it out.
Shameless plugs.
The other thing that I wanted to say about that was that the even more fantastic thing was they had community members in the play.
Yes.
Not only really young people, but older. I know there's a couple of teachers in the musical. It was really nice to see how everyone was pulled into that.
Wasn't every show sold out? Like, I think.
Yes.
Thursday almost was. I was Thursday, but the thing about Thursday is that I typically go to the Thursday ones, and there's years of 50, 60 people there, and it was you could just barely see a couple seats now.
Yeah.
So it was,
We went to
it was
Saturday
great.
Night Night and I thought there would be room. We were lucky we got in.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing, Susan, that you mentioned, that's actually a goal of Susan's, is she's trying to build a program because she feels it's strange that a community the size of St. Albans doesn't have any type of community theater. So her goal was, if we start bringing some of the adults in here, it could build something out of the community.
It was really nice. I have a sister that was a longtime music teacher. I think in a smaller school with a beautiful performing arts center, and they had lots of community members in all of their musicals. It was really, really nice to see community members in a. I want to make a plug, a hope, a wish, that all of our schools in our district are JP Foundation schools, but BFA, I think, to my knowledge, is the only school that doesn't offer passes to students who are doing really well. Well, it used to be academically, and then I think it's school specific. You're allowed to do either academics or transferable skills. But either way, it's a great opportunity for kids to be able to access the mountain free. And if anybody from BFA wanted help with that, I'd be super happy to help figure out how to do that. But it's a free opportunity for our kids to be able to have free passes to JP. And so it's just something that just hasn't been organized yet.
I'd be
So-
happy to work with you. I think we did it up until last year,
Oh,
or maybe it was the
okay.
year before. It
I
was
haven't
tied to
heard-
grades, and when we went to
I'm
proficiencies,
sure, yeah. Well,
that was
that's why
one of the
schools have
things.
gone to like the transferable skills piece.
Right.
So, I mean, it's school specific, every school gets to decide
it's
how they
been
want to
recent
roll
that we
it out.
haven't had it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I haven't heard about it since my daughter's been there, and she's a junior now, but, I didn't know if it had happened prior to.
Yeah,
So,
Sounds something.
something fun to do,
Yeah.
and something fun to
we could
offer.
figure out how to do it.
If you live in
together if
Vermont,
you
it's
want
good to know.
Absolutely.
Skate.
And this is the only time it's gonna be free in the.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. It was an incentive. The students spoke about it.
Absolutely, yeah, I mean, that's great.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure city and towns, and I know Fairfield's doing it now, so, am I right? Do you guys offer it too? And you too, Joe? Yeah.
I also want to thank Sean again for supporting cursive writing in Fairfield. Thank you.
Okay, agenda items for future meetings. The next meeting, we have budget for sure. I feel like there was something else, but,
Legal,
Jeff,
the legal update.
oh, the legal thing.
we'll have some construction work. And
Okay.
we'll need to be on the next meeting.
Okay. All right, so we do not have an executive session tonight, and seeing as we're at the end of our agenda, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Tell us what you really need.
Am I supposed to be bummed out about that?